Good evening. Welcome to Sunday evening's camp roundup from around the NFL. I'm Mike Lucchine. So we finished talking about what's been going on for the first week and a half, 2 weeks of every team's training camp. Now you're going to get a daily video just like this one. It's going to be much shorter, and it's just pretty much going to catch you up on everything that's happened since the last video or the previous day. All right, so these are going to be quick. Again, I envision this as sort of your one-stop shop if you want to just take about 8 to 10 minutes every day to see what's going on in camp. Before we get started, the biggest news of the day is I ordered a new microphone. I know a lot of people are having issues with the audio, so I've got a new microphone coming and that'll be sorted out quickly. All right, let's get right into it. So big news for today, Khalil Shakir, the top receiver for the Buffalo Bills, is going to miss about 4 to 5 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Now, he should be back around week 1, so I wouldn't discount him too much here. You see I have him in round 8 still. And for me, it's more sort of a situation where now I'm maybe pushing him just sort of to the bottom of that cluster of receivers in that range. But you don't want to overreact to an injury that's potentially going to be resolved by the time the season starts. Josh Palmer, who would stand to possibly get a few more targets if Shakir misses regular season time. He's out with a minor injury as well. There's nothing to be concerned about there yet. All right, moving on to the New York Jets. It's starting to seem more and more like Aaron Glenn is serious about this two-back system like the Lions ran with Ben Johnson when Glenn was the defensive coordinator in Detroit. So, Breece Hall, I had him in the 3rd round. Is my second back. I've moved him down to the very end of the 3rd round. He's scaring me a little bit. The one thing with him, though, is I expect the Jets to be bad. If the Jets are bad, I mentioned this in the previous video, I think Breece Hall could be traded around Halloween, and he could end up being the starter somewhere else. But Breece Hall gets a slight bump down for me. There's been a lot of positive news about Braylon Allen and how much he could potentially play this year. So that is some interesting news coming out of Jets camp, or continuing to come out of Jets camp. All right, the Browns. This is not going to be fantasy relevant for you unless you're playing in Superflex leagues, but it looks like it's going to be Joe Flacco as the starter. Dylan Gabriel is also getting some first-team reps. If you haven't figured it out by now, you should not be drafting Shedeur Sanders in your fantasy leagues. Even in Dynasty, you're looking at a late-round Superflex pick in terms of where Shedeur Sanders should be going. So stop drafting Shedeur Sanders. All right, the Colts. I mentioned that Anthony Richardson has had a strong camp. It was kicked off by just him being ready to go, being over that shoulder injury. He had a little bit of a rough day a couple days ago, but he has continued to have a strong camp. So he's someone where, if you're someone who's drafting Justin Fields early, you might want to take a look at Richardson. He's cheaper, and he might even have a longer leash here than Fields. Because the Jets are not really tied to Fields for more than this year. He's got a 2-year deal, but I think everybody in the league probably at this point expects the Jets to have a new starting quarterback next year. So Anthony Richardson, strong camp continues. By the way, Justin Fields was pretty bad the other day in practice. I saw he completed something like 2 out of 12 passes. All right, the Raiders had a practice game yesterday. They had a scrimmage at Allegiant Stadium, and there's some big news to come out of there. First of all, Dante Thornton, that is another story that is not going away. He's locked in as a starter as of right now. Michael Mayer, the backup tight end, he's going to play a lot. And, we hear all the time, like, oh, this team's going to play 2 tight ends, and they could both be fantasy relevant. Well, Michael Mayer had a strong spring. He's picked it right up where he left off, and he caught a couple of passes yesterday in the scrimmage. Another interesting note with the Raiders is on top of Chip Kelly historically running a lot of plays with his offenses, the defense is questionable. Okay, so I think everybody expected Jacorian Bennett to be a starter. He was really good last year at cornerback. Well, when they lined up yesterday in their scrimmage, it was Eric Stokes, not very good with the Packers, and Darian Porter, who's got some potential. He was the third-round pick this year, but he's a project. So that battle isn't decided yet. But there's a chance that you could have a team that runs a lot of plays combined with a defense that might not be that good, and that is what you want for fantasy football. Okay, so that's some interesting news coming out of Raiders camp. Najee Harris staying in the AFC and wrapping things up here. Najee Harris is back at Chargers practice. Now, he didn't practice yesterday, but he was walking around the field. I just, I tend to think that if it were an eye injury where he wasn't going to play at all, he wouldn't even be doing that. So, I see, you might see I still have Najee Harris here in my 8th round. That might be too high for some of you guys. But if he gets this thing sorted out in the next 10 to 15 days and, gets himself on track for week 1, he could really be a value in those that later portion of the mid-rounds. Okay, let's head over to the NFC. New news, A.J. Brown has a hamstring injury. Hamstring injuries are not great. Okay, now this is a minor deal, but if you're looking at maybe that cluster of late first-round wide receivers and early second-round wide receivers, for me, that starts, if you look at my rankings here, starts with Puka Nacua, okay, down to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, A.J. Brown. If you didn't have A.J. Brown last in that tier, you might want to bump him down to last in that tier. Again, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of nothing because this seems like a minor injury, but those players are all pretty close. We don't know for certain which one of those guys is going to have the best year anyway. So, maybe pushing the guy with hamstring issues down to the bottom might not be the worst idea. Okay, Giants camp, staying in the NFC East and staying with hamstrings. Cam Scatterbo out with a hamstring injury. Now, it sounds like he's going to miss a little bit of time. Tyrone Tracy was good last year. I've got him in the 6th round of my rankings. I think that that's justified. If Scatterbo misses a few weeks here, Tracy's definitely starting the year as the starting running back. And even if Scatterbo comes back, I think everybody kind of thought Tracy was the favorite to be the starter there anyway. Now, I still like Scatterbo. I think that he's a high upside handcuff, and he's potentially someone who later in the season doesn't even need the starter to get injured to end up taking over the lead role. So I've still got Scatterbo in the 9th round, and I'll be monitoring that hamstring injury, which sounds like it's going to keep him out a little while. Quickly sticking with the Giants and sticking with the NFC East. The other day when I was talking about the division, I brought up Austin Eckler and the potential to, if he becomes available, could he be someone that the Houston Texans are interested in? Nick Chubb's not really looking that good. I mean, he's getting up there in age. He had that serious injury a couple years ago. And Woody Marks is, he's okay, but he's a rookie. And, he's really more of as someone that I think they probably look at long-term as a backup. Devin Singletary is another name. Okay, we just talked about the Giants running backs. Remember, Singletary had a pretty decent season there before he signed with the Giants. Actually got him a decent deal with the Giants. So I wonder if the Texans might call the Giants and inquire about his availability. Again, that note is speculation on my part. It's not based on news. All right, let's close this out here with a couple other quick notes. Kyle Monange, now I've been hearing he's had a strong start to camp. I did not bring it up because I'm highly skeptical that he's going to have a role. DeAndre Swift looks like he's going to have that, the third down back role, pass catching back role, 2-minute offense role. I think Roshan Johnson might be the David Montgomery in that offense. Well, there are a lot of people who are saying the 7th round pick out of Rutgers, Monange, could take that role. I'm not buying it yet. Okay? We'll see. He never lost a fumble in college, so that's great. They invested a draft pick in him. He's not a great athlete. not that big for running 4.6, but he was very productive at Rutgers, and someone to keep on your radar. Although I wouldn't get too excited here. All right, and then finally, the Packers had their family night game, and this is causing all kinds of waves in the fantasy community. First of all, everybody's talking about how Jalen Reed again was not in 2 wide receiver sets. He didn't take a single rep there in 2 receiver sets. Now, could it mean something? Sure. He didn't play in 2 receiver sets the first 2 years of his career. All right, and so that's why this is sort of interesting news, right? Some people were saying, well, if he plays in 2 receiver sets, including, and I was saying this, by the way, and I still am saying this, then you're going to take a look at his already impressive numbers and give him a bump up. Well, it's not a good sign that he's still not playing in 2 receiver sets, but I would caution you, I don't think the Green Bay Packers stick to whatever alignments they show in their family game matchup over on, August 2nd or whatever, and stick to that, like it's gospel. So that could still change. That said, Matthew Golden was playing in 2 receiver sets. I've already talked about how he's had a great camp. I've bumped Matthew Golden up ahead of Jalen Reed. I've bumped Matthew Golden up to the 6th round. He really looks like he could be a value here. And the real winner out of all this could be Jordan Love, who's been a much better actual quarterback than fantasy quarterback. But, if you miss on these early quarterbacks, Jordan Love could be a really interesting target in those later rounds. Okay, the last note that I have here is that Tucker Kraft is he's had a strong start to camp. He's out with a minor groin injury. Doesn't sound like much, but we'll keep an eye on it. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us. The new mic is on its way. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I'm Mike Lucchino. I'll catch you tomorrow.